Hey everybody, we're here with the fabulous Jeff Blake. He's part of my husband's circle for a very long time.
Yeah, we went to the same high school.
Very,
These many years ago.
many years ago. Apparently he's older than Dirk. I didn't know that, so
Pretty old.
just kidding. So Jeff, tell me about how you came to be such a fabulous human being. I feel that had to do a little bit with your parents, maybe.
I think my parents are great
Yeah,
because if you met my parents, well, I think you have met my parents.
I have.
They're pretty conservative as people go, but they're this old kind of conservative, which is about sort of taking people as they come,
Hmm.
and holding to their values and
Hmm.
not sort of pushing their values on other people. It's a type of conservative that you don't really see anymore.
Hmm.
And so I'm not conservative, right? I'm the opposite of conservative.
Yeah,
But I think it springs directly from their type of conservatism. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right? It's like a conservative from when my dad was my age. You know, what he was then would be a Democrat now. So it's funny how that works.
So yeah, I remember Randall was saying that the parties kind of switched, right? Before the Republicans were good and the Democrats were bad. Now the Democrats are good and the Republicans are bad.
Yeah, I think they've actually switched several times
Yeah.
because it really like we just have a system that's built for having two parties,
Hmm.
and they just move right. When one of them loses for a long time, they just change. So they're always sort of shifting over time. So the parties don't really stand for anything except being one of the two parties, you know.
Hmm.
And right now the Democrats are good, but it's not like the Democrat principles are the best. It's just they're the ones that are closer to where I think a person should be right now. But in 40 years, probably be swapped again.
So when you start showing your child something that you want them to emulate, would you say that that's just something that you do on a day-to-day basis?
It's I feel compelled. Before I had kids, I was not active politically. I have strong political opinions, but I've always felt of myself as sort of an observer
Hmm.
because you don't have any power as one person, so it's not worth your time. But now I always think my kids are going to be 20 and they're going to be looking back at the Trump era and they're going to be thinking, what, or they're going to be asking me, right, what did you do? And there's nothing I can do except I have to do something.
Hmm.
I don't think before my kids were born I wouldn't have marched, but now I want to be in the pictures, right? Is that selfish, right? Like,
Why do you think it's selfish to
because
protect your children's future? You think
I mean,
that's
from
selfish?
from a pure economical calculation, the amount of difference that I make by marching and by going on Facebook and being a culture warrior is next to nothing, right? Effectively zero difference that I make.
Well, I think that you make me feel good knowing that you're out there. So
Well, that's good.
that's not zero,
Okay, good. Well,
right?
that's something. Like I for the last 2 years since the Trump election, as you
Yeah.
probably know, I've been going on Facebook and posting on all of my this is my slacktivism, right? I've been posting on my elected representatives' walls because I have a whole stack of completely corrupt Republican representatives in Washington who are filling their pockets with taxpayer money instead of doing anything for the people of Austin or people anywhere, right? Like Michael McCall or Ted Cruz, just pure corruption, right? Swamp creatures, and it doesn't do any concrete good to go shout at them on Facebook. Except I feel like maybe there's a sliver of people out there who are seeing their Facebook posts and need to know that there's another perspective. That was what
Hmm.
I was originally thinking, right? Right, 49% of people feel one way and their mind can't be changed. 49% of people feel the other way. Well, it's actually probably closer to like 55 and 42 or something. But there's that one sliver of people, and if I could like I don't know, just adjust one person's mind towards reality and away from the right wing news bubble, I feel like that would be worth all the effort I put into typing nasty comments on my representative's Facebook post.
So I'm gonna give you my family's example. Okay. So I feel like my family is very open-hearted and very wonderful that way, but are very quick to fall into a bucket of thought,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I have some nephews that I helped, or I was around in their early childhood, and they're wonderful people. But I feel that sometimes they can reflect their own peers, and maybe their peers are kind of very right wing
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of uh, regurgitating whatever they hear. So my oldest nephew is in the army,
Mm-hmm.
right? And he's a wonderful guy. He's like a do-gooder type, right? But if you press him, he won't stand up for righteousness. I don't think.
Hmm.
I think he goes to the whole very conservative religious aspects that can be limiting to people's lives, right?
Yeah.
Or can short people's joy. And my concern is that he has a child, right?
Hmm.
Really, really cute kid. His name is Roman. And now, because of his wife's family needing them to be around, they moved to Tennessee,
Hmm.
right? Which
Right.
is like, right, more,
Yeah.
more of that.
It's pretty deep
So,
south.
yes. So if you were talking to somebody that had that um, close, where they were closer to becoming um, uh, healthier and a safer perspective,
Hmm.
embracing it, what would you say to those people that, like what you said, that one that one area of people, or that one group of people that are so close to letting those values go that are discriminatory and
Hmm.
not healthy?
So that's sort of the question of our times, right? Because we've had this calcified hard core of people that are white supremacists basically,
Mm,
and I'm a cynic, right? What I believe is that people don't really change. People believe what they believe not because of reason. They believe what they believe because of their tribal identity. Like the take guns as a random issue, right?
okay.
I'm not a big proponent of gun control personally, but I'm not a gun owner either. I'm just not into guns. I don't think that's very important. But some people view that as part of their identity to be a gun owner and to what looks like worshiping guns. And you can't argue them out of that because it's part of their identity. When something is part of somebody's, they see it as part of their identity, part of their tribal affiliation. It's just impossible to get them to give that up because to get them to give up something like being opposed to abortion or being in favor of abortion, that's become a tribal identity. You have to ask them to give up their identity. They feel like if I give up on being a supporter of strong gun rights, then I'm giving up on all of my family and all of my friends. And deep in like our lizard brains that we all have, they're thinking I'm abandoning my tribe. I'm being disloyal to my family. It's how humans are just built. So there are some issues that are not part of people's tribal identity. And those issues you can actually discuss, and you just have a normal discussion with people, and you can change their mind. But on issues that are not that are part of people's tribal identity, you just can't. So what we should be working to do is to depoliticize those issues. If we're part of the political fight, kind of fighting each other, like we're carrying the flag for our tribal identity against their tribal identity, it won't change their mind. And that can lead to political change, but generally only in a violent way, which nobody wants.
Right.
Nobody reasonable wants on either side.
That would be like a civil war.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when I look at the situation in the U.S. and I run the simulation forward in my mind, I see a civil war coming because I see the core group of people that elected Trump and are expecting their lives to change in a positive way. They're expecting their vote to get rid of all the immigrants or whatever, bring things back to some mythical 50s white utopia that never existed. That's just not going to happen. Not that nobody wants that to happen. Lots of people want that to happen, but it's not going to. If you just look at the historical trends. And so, since they've made white supremacy part of their tribal identity, they are going to freak out when it doesn't happen for the next few decades. And I see like a low grade KKK style civil war breaking out. Driving through Austin in pickup trucks shooting at people's houses like the KKK used to do.
Not so long ago.
Right, yeah, that's a long-winded non-answer to your question. But I don't know how to. I don't think there is a way to change people's minds on issues that have become political hot buttons.
So, like for example, the Vietnam vet that came back and did a lot of probably very bad things, right? And they thought that they were gonna be upheld, I don't know, as heroes or something when they came back, and then
Mm-hmm.
they weren't, and then they felt abandoned by their country, right?
Yeah.
And so they're mad, and having all kinds of feelings because it was a very unique experience for them.
Right.
What can you say to somebody like that, or can you say, or can you give people information before that happens, like like in an education, like a parent, like saying, um, what this is what happens when you go to war. This is why people are sent to war, like as a because it seems like if there's a war out there somewhere, more than likely, would you think it's because big business is trying to get some kind of mineral from some land and they need it for a battery or something, and then
Mm-hmm.
they whoop up people to get them all pissed off and say racist things so that they will um, vote for the war, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So if people understand the economy of war, do you think that, and then if they realize where they fit in the economy of war
Mm-hmm.
and that they have value and that maybe they shouldn't give up their humanity for uh, a,
Well,
a paycheck in the army? I don't know.
I would say that you don't have to give up your humanity to take a paycheck in the army.
Okay.
Uh, I think war is very bad. I would love it if America scaled down our military and stopped getting involved in endless foreign wars all over the planet for no concrete benefit to me or most people in the U.S. But from what I've read and heard of the military, you go in there, it's very human. You become part of a family. They put you through in most branches of the military, they put you through a boot camp, which sort of brainwashes you a little bit to fit into this particular organizational structure, and fitting into a group of people with a larger goal is the most human thing there is. That's what humans love. We're these tribal animals. They just use this intense kind of re-education program to put people into to reorient people's tribal loyalties to the military. And so
Mm.
that's good. You can accomplish great things if you do that. The problem is when you have a military full of people that are raring to do something, that are raring to have a mission, you have to find a mission for them. And so there's this big political push to start wars, to use the military. So I feel like it's definitely not the average soldiers on the ground's fault that we're in Afghanistan still, or that we're in Syria still, or whatever. But the system is the system is built. I don't think it's intentionally built. The system is evolved in such a way that people want to join the military for the most human and noble of reasons. Yeah, some of them probably even want to like do good for their country. You know, they're patriotic, and that's great. But they end up doing bad things on the other end. These pointless wars that accomplish nothing, kill a bunch of people, and get a bunch of them killed. So the right thing to do would be to repurpose the military as something better. Like I think the Army Corps of Engineers is great. I think the Coast Guard's pretty good. I think the branches of the military that launch satellites and collect information about the cosmos and the world, that's great. But the parts of the military that kill people in the desert, that's bad. You know, so how do we do that? How do we have a group like the military that takes young? You know, I was a young man once. You were a young man once, right?
Not long ago.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, I was a young man once. So I'll just lecture you, lad. But when you're a young man, you want to belong to something. You want to fight, right? You're full of angst for the most part. I remember that, right? I remember talking to my friends. I was never into the military, but a lot of my friends who were just as smart as I am, just as interested in higher learning as I was, they would say things like, "I want to go to the military and kill people," right? And straight up. And because that's sort of it feels good to have a mission, to be doing something, to be put to use, to be part of something bigger than yourself. And I think all young men, probably a lot of young women, want that. So how do we create structures that give people that other than the military, that have a better purpose in the world? I don't know. I don't have an answer. But something you said made me think of a better answer to your previous question. How do you change people who have what you consider to be repugnant political beliefs? And I think the answer is you can't change them, but what you can do is you can connect with them. Because I'm sure you've noticed that if you sit down with a hardcore right winger, just have a conversation about, I don't know, football or music or something, you'd have a lot in common. Even if you don't have a lot in common, it's fun to talk about the things you disagree with. Oh yeah, I don't like Miley Cyrus or whatever.
Mm.
And when you do that, you humanize yourself to them, right? They can no longer think of you as this other that is out there just doing evil that they can persecute with no repercussions. They think, oh yeah, that's polynomial,
Yeah.
right? That's I mean, I still totally disagree with everything that polynomial stands for, but it's she's a person, right? And the opposite happens too. They become a person to you, and if we can use these opportunities to remind each other of our shared humanity, then maybe we can curb some of the worst excesses of tribalism. Although it's not going to go away, and you're not going to change their mind. We kind of live in a culture where you can. I don't think the culture is bad. We live in a media environment where you can select the things you want to hear.
Yeah.
Everybody's always filtering by choosing which websites they go to, which Twitter accounts they follow, which TV channels they watch. And so if you do that, you will get just this one-sided, your side is right and the other side is wrong. Your people are good, the other people are bad. Media environment. And it's really easy to get bunkered up for everybody everywhere. I think it's a natural human feature to filter your information that way. So yeah, that would be my answer to your question. Just be a person to them, connect with them in any way you can, and remind everybody of your shared humanity.
That's uh what I want to say is I feel that that's kind of like when people say you become bigger than your experience by traveling or by right because you meet other people
Sure.
or by reading books. So as a young parent,
Hmm.
how are you, and your children are very young,
Yeah, my children are 1 and 2.
yeah. So when they're older, what kinds of things are you going to expose them to show them, a bigger picture?
So when my first kid was about to be born, I spent months thinking, what would I want somebody to have told me when I was when I was young? And the conclusion I eventually came to, which is kind of wonky, is this world is built of systems, and the systems work a certain way, and the key is to learn how the systems work and how you can use them and adjust them and modify them. Like what she's going to be in school for a big chunk of her early life, as most of us are. And school is a system. There's a certain way it works. I had some trouble in school, mostly because I didn't understand what the system was for and what it was, how it worked. Right? I had this false belief that the purpose was for me to learn as much as possible. But school is actually not about that. School is about sort of teaching everybody the same amount of stuff, and also teaching people how to exist in an institution. And I was never very good at that. So that's that's the answer, right? Is how teach her how systems work, and don't let her fall into the traps that a lot of people fall into of tribal thinking, which is a natural way to think. It's like instinctive for everybody, but when when humans get together in organizations and groups and they do things, there are certain patterns that emerge for how these things work. Like I think that I've come to believe that the reason that we're going to enter a new age of feudalism in America, because I think that the way human groups organize themselves is that the person with the biggest army is in charge, basically. And in America, that has led to some good results because America doesn't have one dominant natural resource. So in order to fund an army, you have to have a big tax base, which leads people to, in order to get the money to pay for the army, they have to have public education, they have to have health care, they have to all these wonderful benefits that have led us to have a pretty strong society compared to a lot of other societies in the world. You look at societies that have like a petrostate that has, if you can control the oil wells, then you can pay the army, and you don't need to care about anybody else, right? If you can control the diamond mine, if you're in Congo or whatever, then you don't need to care about anybody else because you can pay the army. But in America, there's no one thing you can control. You need to have a bunch of taxpayers, which means you need to have a bunch of educated, healthy people working to generate taxes. But what I think is in the pretty near future, you're going to be able to field a robot army of drones for much cheaper than a traditional army. And so we're going to end up with this like narrow aristocratic class of Mark Zuckerbergs that are able to field their own army of drones, and they're not going to care about taxpayers anymore. They're not going to care about the welfare of anybody outside of their little tribe. So this is my takeaway. I need my daughters to understand how this system is going to work because there's going to be a lot of chaos and they need to be able to manipulate the system for their own benefit. What I've done in my life is I'm basically a technician, I'm a programmer. So I've been able to develop technical skills which I can trade for money, which is great. But that's going to be valueless in the future when they don't need programmers. They don't need nearly as many programmers as they did before because they don't have all of these. I'm a video game programmer, right? They're not going to need that many video game programmers just to make enough video games for Mark Zuckerberg in his palace. So I want them to be able to find a path in life that involves manipulating this what I consider a feudalistic system going forward to their advantage. That's a little
That's like
longer.
really, I don't know, a little bit scary,
Yeah,
right?
very scary.
Um, because like in Mexico, you kind of see that, right?
Yeah.
Where if people have like a lot of money and they know that they're going to be maybe kidnapped, they develop a big safety net around them,
Mm-hmm.
which more than likely doesn't respect people's
Yeah.
rights, right? And they kind of use people a lot. So that's just very close to us. So even like in West Texas, I want to say there's a little bit of that, right? Because it's so big and people can do a lot of stuff and nobody sees it because they're far away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so if that becomes more mainstream, what do you think is going to happen to our economy?
I think the economy. Well, we're already seeing it. The economy is growing vastly more unequal, right? A lot of the wealth in terms of money and wealth in terms of property and intellectual property is accruing to a smaller and smaller group of people. So there's the rest of us, right, which aren't on the top of the pyramid, and then there's the we call them the 1%, or there's actually like the 0.1%, and that's going to keep happening. The only thing that, if you look historically, the only thing that undoes equality like that is basically violence or a plague or something, and we're unlikely. It, I don't think that's going to work because of robot drone armies now, right? The capital investment to field an army is much lower than it used to be, and so I think that's just going to keep happening.
Wow.
And I think that it is a product of historical forces that there's not a lot we can do about. And that's a little grim, isn't it?
That is grim. I'm like, what happened? So with that in mind, how do you prepare for something like that?
Well,
Well, like what you said, if it's a system and you would want her to field the system and work it to her advantage,
yeah.
what are some of the things that would be working it to her advantage?
So you need to be able to harness values at scale. You need to be able to profit from the work of other people at a very large scale. And that means you can't do what I did. You can't become an expert in some field and trade your expertise for money, right? Which is what programmers do. What you need to be able to do is put yourself in a position where, say, 1,000 programmers are working, and you are able to take the value of their work and sell it to somebody else. This is what publicly traded companies, CEOs, companies have been doing for a long time, but it's been a pretty good trade because the owners of the companies that I've worked for in the past have needed my expertise so much that they've paid me enough to make a pretty good life for myself, right? So that the exchange is good. But as the value of human labor crashes because of increasing automation, there's going to be some fields that last a long time, and there's going to be a lot of fields that just go away completely as for a worker. But you want to be at the top of that pyramid. And so I'm thinking, how would I do that? If I was a young person, how would I be able to control other people's output at a grand scale? And my conclusion is there are two professions that do that effectively that don't have a huge barrier to entry. Oh yeah, sorry. The number one profession to do that is to inherit a lot of money. If you have a lot of money, it's really easy to use that money to extract money from other people. Lots of people do that, right? Look at any rich heir, and they do that. But I don't have a lot of money. They're not going to inherit a lot of money from me. Sorry, kids. So what they would do is either I want them to be a hedge fund manager because what a hedge fund manager does is talk other people who do have money into letting them manage their money, and then they just take a cut. And that allows, if you were able to do that with a large enough chunk of money, you can cut off a lot of money for yourself. and you're benefiting from other people's money, and that's sort of a salesman job, right? You convince people to give you their money by convincing them that their money will grow faster under you than anywhere else, or whatever. The other one is megachurch pastor, because I remember I went to Baytown once for a family event, and it was in this church, and this church, Baytown is not an extremely prosperous place. And this church was a bunch of working people who were just making their lives, but not a lot of money floating around. But in front of this church, there were three reserved parking spaces for the preacher and his two kids. And in those three reserved parking spaces were three Ferraris in this church. And this was not a rich church, right? This was not Gateway Church or Riverbend or whatever these giant mega churches are.
The cream rises to the top.
Yeah, they were able to use these people's religiosity to extract a certain amount of money from them to pay themselves. So all those people were working and giving a cut of money to the preacher, right? And the preacher was spending it on himself and his family and the things that he wanted. Look at Joel Osteen, right?
Right.
Right? I mean, he doesn't add anything except maybe a feeling of religious virtue to the people that send him money, but they do send him money. So that's what I'm thinking. Hedge fund manager or megachurch pastor would be the best way to jump this transition into the new feudalism. Because if you have all these resources available to you, then you can set yourself up as one of the new aristocrats.
Wow. Okay, so what about like safety? So let's say there's this new life for everybody, and people that are super rich have their own armies.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is going to happen to like individual liberties?
Well, I think that's really hard to predict because a lot of the problems with individual liberties have been the result of tribalism, right? White people hate black people, Christians hate gays, or whatever. And it's not based on any kind of concrete fact. It's just based on the groups need somebody to hate, and they usually pick a marginalized group to hate on. And hating on another group of people makes people feel great. Humans love it. So it's really hard to predict. It seems like, just from recent history, it seems like the arc of justice, the arc of moral justice, like as Dr. King said, is bending towards history, or sorry, it's bending towards justice, right? The arc of moral history or something, I forget. Whatever, things are getting better. Is
The
what
long range, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that culturally, there's enough goodwill for marginalized people. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon because, Robo Zuckerberg with his army of drones, he doesn't really care about LGBT people one way or the other. It's irrelevant to him. So he's not going to persecute them unless he needs to. Like the point of persecuting somebody is to rally a whole bunch of people, but he doesn't need to do that. So why would he care? Everybody's just going to be poor together. And so from that perspective, that's good, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because I had a thought a long time ago about the the a dome being put over my personal life, and being told you can't leave this dome, right? Um, in terms of like the chip, right? Like they want to put a chip in you or whatever, like like a little
Sure, tracking chip. Yeah.
And I was like, put one in me, but make weed legal. The only law I'm breaking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So would you think that people adapt and people would just be okay with a little bit of freedom being taken away, or maybe a little bit of like military life, military I don't know, Marxist laws or
whatever? Yeah. I think people are very good at adapting. I think people are very good at living in harsh conditions. So whatever happens, I think a lot of people would just sort of go along with their lives. Because, like I was saying earlier, I don't feel like I have much power to change anything in our political system. So why would I? What am I going to do if somebody passes a bunch of laws that I don't like? Like they just put the rapist on the Supreme Court, right?
right?
And for the explicit purpose of banning birth control or whatever the heck. If that happens, that's terrible. What can I do about it though? I'm not going to like leave the country probably. What can a person do other than soldier on? Except try and anticipate the changes in society and position yourself in the best way you possibly can to benefit from them. But people always hate other people. Like I think I thought after Trump got elected was this is going to be great for the Democrats because the only reason the Republicans were so um, unified was because they had Obama to hate, right? Like there was a black president that nobody hates anything more than a black president. But now we've got Trump, and Trump is way more hateable than Obama ever was, right? You know, he's not black, so the Republicans aren't going to hate him, but he's just a repulsive person personally, right? Syphilitic racist. And it has totally been true. The Democrats have been unified in a way that I can't remember seeing in my adult life. You know, not even under George W. Bush were Democrats as unified as they are now. And I think it's because people need an other. It's sort of like a built-in feature of human psychology. They need an other to be angry at, to hate. If there isn't an other, there's a line from a movie that I always think about where the guy said, if you lock a bunch of people in a room, they may not pick a leader, but they will pick somebody to hate, which is real grim, right?
Very grim.
And so there will always be people trying to gain power over other people by dividing them, by marking out some other group as the hateful person and trying to gain power for themselves. And how do you fix that? I don't know. But that'll always happen. I think it'll just change though, because you can't hate the same group for very long if nothing bad is actually happening to you because of the group, right? You can't hate gays for very long without with the gays aren't actually doing anything to you. They make all this crazy like gay agenda, right? They're gonna turn our kids gay in the schools or whatever because they need to invent an attack from the other people in order to keep hating them. But people get tired of it. It's like not novel hate anymore. They need new hate. So I expect we'll find new hates, new hatreds, new groups to look down on, right? Immigrants is what it is right now. But let's see what's next.
So if somebody wanted to encourage a congressman to introduce a law into um, being, is there such a law that could prevent itself from being changed later? Like, are any laws written in stone? No, right?
No, because laws they're all not only are they not written in stone, they're written on paper. You know, there's
Yeah.
laws only mean something if people are willing to follow the law, and that people are only willing to follow the law being enforced. But what laws do they enforce? The laws that culturally we kind of want to enforce. Like for instance, the emoluments clause of the Constitution, right? Trump has been violating that since day one, right? He's been taking payments from foreign government since day one, which is like in black and white against the Constitution. But nobody wants to enforce it, so it doesn't matter. Barack Obama had an American citizen assassinated by a drone with no due process. That is also specifically against the Constitution. We're not supposed to do assassination, and American citizens are supposed to have a due process, which means trial, right? They didn't put the guy on trial; they just blasted him from the sky with the killer robots, And how was that law enforced? It wasn't because the guy he blasted was a terrorist, an American that had gone to work for Al Qaeda, and so he's a guy that we don't like as a culture, and so it was okay to kill him. But the law didn't matter. The law, right? So what I'm saying is the laws are only enforced if people want them to be enforced. So there's no way to like make a law that can never be changed.
Grim.
It's very grim. Yes.
Wow, Jeff. This is like way different than I thought what we were going to be talking about.
Sorry.
No, no. I mean, this is like real life, right? This is like real life, and you've given everybody that's going to be listening to. So right now we have like two people watching, but this is going to be put on just the channel, and people can come back and visit it.
Yeah.
So you've given me a lot to think about, and I think anybody that listens to this will also will have to think a lot about what you said. I think that a lot of people are like myself, where you believe a story, right? I was raised this way.
Yeah.
I have, inherent, value.
Yeah.
But then you wake up and then you're in this world where, things are really, really different.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that um, it's not scary, right? Because I'm not on fire. I'm not like running from a flood or anything like that. But in terms of preparedness, um, I don't feel like I'm prepared. Like, how are you going to prepare your children to mitigate all of these things?
It's something I think about a lot, and I don't know. Like my kids are very young. And I think that parents don't actually have that much control over how their kids turn out. Um, so it's not like I can put them on a path, even if I knew what the right thing to do was. But one thing I should say is that people have been saying stuff like I'm saying right now for a long time, and it hasn't happened yet, right? I see the crucial difference as how cheap it is to run your own private army now of drones compared to how cheap it used to be. But people have been talking about fascist takeovers of the United States for a long time, yeah, at least 100 years, probably like 150 years, and it hasn't really happened because what happens is people don't like it, and politicians need a certain amount of people to like them. Even autocratic dictators need a certain amount of people to like them. Otherwise, they just get shot, right? They need an army, and then the army needs like a group of people that run the army, and they need somebody to run the economy for them. They need somebody to extract the diamonds from the mine or something. So they end up needing to have this constituent base of hundreds of thousands of people, and so it prevents things from getting as bad as I'm saying they're going to get. It always has in the past.
So that's that arc of things going to a better moral place.
Yeah, right. And the arc is like it's not even really an arc because it goes up and down, right? We have progress, right? We elect a black president, right, which is great, right? And then we have this backslide. We elect a stupid game show president, right? But overall, things are getting better. For instance, one thing I kind of thought was going to happen when Trump got elected was that they were going to bring gay marriage, the ban on gay marriage back. They're going to pack the Supreme Court and get rid of gay marriage. Nobody's even tried. They haven't even thought about it, right? Like that's kind of a done deal. So that kind of shows that things are getting better, right? Socially speaking,
Mm-hmm.
which is nice. Uh,
Right? We're gonna live. We're gonna live. We're gonna live, and I want to say that as far as like participating in the political thing, all I do is basically follow Rebecca Havelmeyer's vote. Like she's somebody that I've known for a while,
yeah.
and just whatever she's doing is what I do. Um, because I've seen your postings when you've gone to the doors of the senators and
Oh yeah.
right. So where would you spend your time if you were going to jump into a political participation?
Local.
Local.
Because I've been to Michael McCall's office, who is the 100% corrupt Republican congressman for Texas District 10, which is a gerrymandered district that is designed to prevent anybody in those sections of Austin and Houston from having any political representation. And he's a guy who, if you watch him, he basically stuffs his pockets with taxpayer money constantly, right? That's just his goal. He's a rich guy. He's gotten richer since he went into Congress. And so I can email him. I have. I've emailed him. I've sent him handwritten letters. I've posted on his Facebook page. I've gone to his office. I've called his office dozens and dozens of times. It is irrelevant to him because he doesn't need my vote because of gerrymandering. So that's kind of a waste of time. Um, the thing to do is to get but the actual things that affect you the most are the local regulations from your city government and from your local community, right? Those are the things like Austin banned Uber or something, right? Remember that? That was a couple of years ago. They banned Uber, and then Uber paid the Representative Charles Schwartner to introduce some legislation bringing Uber back all across Texas. Um, that's something that actually affected my life, right? Because I kind of use Uber every now and then, and I was in favor of the Uber ban. It wasn't even a ban of Uber. They wanted stricter identity or security requirements on Uber, and Uber was like, no, we don't like spending money. And but that's a concrete thing that affected my life way more than the recent tax bill, for instance, or that we heard so much about. The tax bill was a big deal, sort of in the grand scheme of things, but in terms of affecting my life today, the Uber bill was much, much, much a bigger deal, and that's something that I actually do have effect on because those type of regulations are come from the Austin City Council, which has I think it's 12 people. I should probably know that, but the one that represents my local Austin district is Leslie Poole, which I love because it's just like Leslie's Pool.
Okay.
Right. Um, and the number of people that voted for her was like a few thousand, right? Compare that to the number of people that voted for Michael McCall is in the hundreds of thousands. So he doesn't care about any one of them. Even if you're on his side, he does not care about you because statistically he's going to win no matter what because of the gerrymandering. But Leslie Poole will actually listen to you, and the things Leslie Poole is doing will affect your life much more directly, right? There's this whole issue in Austin called Code Next, which is just only important to people who are local in Austin, but it's going to make a big difference in the upcoming years of what happens with Code Next, which it got shut down, which I'm sad about, and Leslie Poole was against it, so that sucks. But my point is, you have a lot more influence on your local politics, and your local politics affect you a lot more. So just be local. Don't the things at the national level that occur, they get all of the media, they get all of the press, but these changes are going to happen over periods of decades, and you probably won't even notice if you're not paying attention. A lot of people won't notice until the drones come and put us all down like cattle.
So, are you gonna invent like an anti-drone sensor and annihilator?
That's a good idea, right?
Yeah.
Right? Why don't I invest in a drone army? That's a great idea. Okay, yeah, to be continued.
Or like something that sprays and like makes them.
I read this great article where they were looking for technologies to take down drones because if you once you can fly a drone right into an airport or something and go into a jet engine and crash it or something. It's kind of dangerous in some areas. But how do you stop someone from flying a drone? You can't just jam all the radio frequencies because then you're jamming all the radio frequencies you're using. So there are these drones with nets that go and throw them at other drones, catch them, and they also sometimes train falcons to catch drones.
Whoa.
It's super cool.
I like the idea of falcon.
Yeah, because all they have to do is like grab one of the rotors and the thing falls down because it has quadcopter or octocopter or whatever.
That's cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, I like that. I like it. I like that idea. Jeff, thank you for coming today.
Yeah, I'm sorry if this got into my crazy stuff.
No, don't be sorry. What I want to say about that is just that it's a huge chunk of reality, right? And most people are not comfortable with that much reality affected, right? Because it's like it's well, not the not the amount of reality, but so much as that the influence over that.
Yeah, you want to feel like you can do something about your life. You don't want to feel like you're just a statistic, a part of a giant mass movement, but you are.
And I'm here for that because I'm gonna belong on some level, and I'm going to do something on some level, even if it's just like sharing my sandwich with somebody, like,
right.
To help out or to respect other people's rights. I feel that everybody goes.
Yeah. So that's perfect because that's the thing you can do that makes your life better right now, right here. By helping another person, by making a connection with another person, that's a concrete benefit to yourself that your action has a direct consequence on. And that's way better than any of this political stuff. This political stuff, you have so little control over it that getting upset about it is a waste of time from like a purely robotic standpoint. It's real hard not to get upset about it because, we're all tribal beings that get upset about these things. But if you can focus on the local, focus at most on your local city politics. If you got something like even smaller than that, then that's better, right? Your local church, your local school. Those are things where you can have a real positive impact on your life and the life of people around you. And that's where your time is best spent. If you
share the road, right? I feel like
yes.
Like if we can drive safely, we can do a lot of things, right? Because there's everybody's represented on the street.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when I'm driving, I always try to share the road because I feel the less strife, the less everything, right? Other people in, I do all that kind of.
Sure. Yeah. If you can be an example to other people for how to share the road as to how to drive safely, like because we're all crowd thinkers. We all kind of do what the people around us do. Nobody wants to be the first person doing a new thing. So if you can be that first person driving safely, if you could be that first person stopping or making room for the bicycle, I don't like to toot my own horn too much, but in Austin they've been putting in these crosswalks with stoplights on them.
Yeah.
So it's not actually a stoplight; it's just a crosswalk, but it has a red light that you're supposed to stop for it. And when they first put those in, nobody knew to stop for them because they were new. And this is Texas, where we like to put the pedal down, right?
Right.
And so I would stop for them because I looked up the regulation and I knew that I was supposed to stop when the light was flashing. And a lot of times I would be the only one doing it. But I think I was an example to other people for how they should be behaving according to the traffic rules.
And that's why I picked you, Jeff, to come and talk to
I mean,
everybody that's gonna,
I'm
pick up
just
the
a
knowledge.
I'm just a little bit of a hero, is what I'm saying.
No, you are. You need a cape. I might have one,
No.
a blue one.
Oh yeah.
It's in that box for you.
Perfect.
But Jeff, I want you to come back and maybe we can talk about other things, and or maybe we can talk about the development of whatever you have going on in regards to taking drones out, or if you have like some falcon hatchlings you want to, to
Mhm.
I don't know, like what are they called, hand raised birds.
Oh yeah, the with the jesses on their claws and the hoods on them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
bring some of those guys whenever you do have that action happening,
Mm.
right? Also, I made a brisket, so if you want to eat.
Brisket. Yeah, I love that.
Thanks everybody. We're gonna take a short break, and then Santiago Sky will be coming. Yes, and he's gonna do a performance. Thank you, Jeff. Boom.